TED, Ideas to Change the World. Pretty complicated task if you think how many hours we would need to come up with ideas that could actually change the world. So let's go a little bit lower. TEDx, ideas that can change our community. Still a pretty complicated task. How about ideas that can change our family? Ideas that can change ourselves? And what turns this idea into action? What is the motor? What is the fuel? What is the spark that turns an idea into action? Factum, non verbae. Actions, not words. Hechos, no palabras. Where does this spark come from? Is it a spark of love? Do we need a spark that comes from our hearts? Our hearts get ignited, and then we listen to the universe. And when we do that, we become architects of our reality. We become architects of our own destiny. From chaos, we can manipulate an idea and bring it down and materialize it. And that is when we become gods. And God said, let there be light. Why would an omnipresent, omnipotent God would need to speak and say, let there be light? Why could he not just snap his fingers and there would be light? And that tells us that we need to manifest. And when we manifest, we create reality. And we bring all these amazing ideas into action. And they stop just being a dream, and they become something material. And the base of this talk is a little bit about that, because when I was asked to talk about Earth and permaculture, I was thinking, okay, preparing my talk, but where does this inspiration really come from? And my inspiration came from a little dream I had and from listening to my inner voice, to my instinct, telling me that I was eating crap, that I was eating horrible food. And then one day I wanted to change what I was eating, because as Bernardo said, we are what we eat. And I realized that we go shopping in these horrible corner stores that sell the same kind of crap all over the world. And we go to these temples of consumption where the peasant, the campesino, gets the worst slice of the cake, and where there is no one-to-one interaction with a person that's selling us a product at all. And I remember being a kid going with my father, and we used to visit these amazing markets, and we used to go to the panaderia, to the bread store, and we would get a little piece of bread at the end of our visit. And we knew the name of this person knew our name. And here in Tulum, many of you guys go to your panadero and they know your name, and that is what's beautiful about Tulum and this beautiful community in which we thrive and we live. And so it made me think, okay, I'm going to change my habits, my eating habits. I'm going to create a garden. I'm going to make my own little garden at home. And little did I know that 8 years later, a whole chain of actions, a whole chain of events were changing my life, and not only my life, but the life of my family. And so I started realizing that all the food we eat has amazing amounts of pesticides, hormones. They're causing us a lot of sickness, a lot of lymphoma, a lot of cancers. There's signs in these kind of grow fields that we can't even go in, yet we are eating it. Amazing, amazing what we do to ourselves. And another issue that's very important is not only what we're putting into our body, but where does it come from? How far is it traveling? And what is the footprint? And what is the energetic karma of the food that we are consuming? So we bring blueberries from Canada, and we send coconuts to Canada. We package them, and then we fly them in a plane that's farting CO2 all over the atmosphere. And eventually they land into a central de abastos, or a big warehouse, where they get sent by trucks to the supermarkets in which we go and consume them. And all this is due because of money. That is the trigger. That is the motive of why this system works. A big problem that's happening on the planet right now is also desertification. This photo was taken by NASA in the same time of year, 1978, the second one in 2012, in which we can see the drastic change that the planet is facing, the amount of desertification that we're causing by our habits. And not only is animal management and big fires causing this problem, but also the way that we eat our food the way that we depend on agriculture and modern agriculture. So the actual problem right now of agriculture is that there's two types of agriculture that we have to come to depend on. And one of them is the Industrial Revolution, the industrial agriculture, and the other one is subsistence agriculture. So what we do is we get to a piece of land and we clear it all of all life possible, 100 hectares, maybe 1,000 hectares, and we plant monoagriculture, one species of something. It could be corn, it could be bananas. Then we plow the earth and we turn it over, and what we do is that all the microorganisms die from the sun hitting the microorganisms, so we start killing further the soil. And then these big machines come and compact the soil, which prevents water from infiltrating into the subsystem, into the subsoil. And then we plant our monoagriculture crop. And eventually, that agriculture crop is going to need fertilizers, it's going to need hormones, it's going to need a bunch of different chemicals in order to thrive. So we do that, and while we're doing that, we're killing the planet, we're killing further all the animals that live around, all the microorganisms, and eventually, after we see that the soil is burning, is finishing, we decide that we're going to burn it so that we get an extra couple of years of life in the soil. And after we burn it, we get deserts. And the soil is totally degraded. There's nothing we can do about it anymore. And what we do, we move to the next land available, and we create the whole process again. With subsistence farming, what happens is that people that don't have design in their forms of cultivating food, they will just go cut the trees. The roots are the ones that prevent erosion from the mountains. The roots are the ones that permit the soil to remain intact. So we cut down all the trees in the forest and the mountains, and we start cultivating. This is what happens. Eventually, the mountains start eroding. We create big gullies, big canyons. You can see in the bottom of the photo, there's three fellas, two in red, one in white. That's how small they are. That's compared. That's how teeny they are. Next photo. And so if you continue that mountain, that's the same mountain range when these photos were taken in Congo. And that's the kind of life that lives in the Congo. We were invited by Canadian Ape Alliance and Zero Footprint, Canada, Canadian companies, to start a project in order to stop and prevent the subsistence farming with a community of pygmies that were kicked out from their original forest land. And so we realized that we were too far. We were in Africa. And our beloved Tulum, which is where we started visiting here since 1993, it needed a lot of attention as well. So we decided to go local. And we're going to go a few ones. Go. Another one? OK, done. Another one? Thank you. So we decided to go local, and we started to try to reproduce what we did in Congo, but at a local level here in Tulum. And we created the Green Beet Farm about 2011. And so when we started, we had a land. We cleared most of the trees except the nitrogen-fixing trees. And we found that the soil was all rock. I mean, for you guys that have been around Tulum, you know that it's all limestone, rock everywhere, no soil, no topsoil, really hard to grow. And so, please, next one. Eventually, we made our first little nursery, and we started planting our first seedlings. This photo was taken 4 years ago. And we started creating our first beds. And then those beds were planted. Next one. Those beds were planted, and they started growing and growing. And that inspired us and told us that we were on the right path, on the right track. And we further kept building beds, and we started doing our first permaculture certification courses. 20 students from all over Mexico, Chile, Argentina came for the first course, and we started designing the land. And we started making further beds, which we started planting, and eventually, a few months later, they became that. And that further inspired us that we were on the right track. We were now getting more vegetables, growing more food, and we started designing further the project, and we eventually got these raised beds with a gravitation, gravity, thank you. and then we created these beds, and they started flourishing as well with all kinds of greens and vegetable greens. We put some tires, and the tires started blossoming as well. Basil, cranberry hibiscus. And then from there, which is the entrance of the farm, a few months later, we created that. Lots of live lemongrass, jamaica, chaya, tons of arugula, rocket. And we've had since 6 different permaculture design certification courses. Thanks to the work of all these people, plus amazing volunteers, we started creating further systems, and we started weaving a little bit of society that comes into our community. Giant pak choys, okra, we made a pallet, little living room. We made a pond with aquaponics, cotton, eggplants, basil, arugula, giant lettuce, more eggplants. And finally, we started getting fruits. We started sowing the fruits of love that we intended we started getting the fruits of love that we intended to sow in the first place. And our next duty was to start inspiring kids. And now the kids are going to be the future of Tulum. They're the ones that are going to be getting our planet when we're not here anymore. And now it's time to inspire them. And it's time for them to start listening to their inner voice and start realizing that the change is at hand and it's very possible. And so I ask you to please start sowing seeds of love so that you can eventually harvest fruits, sweet fruits of love. Thank you.